You know, out in wheat fields all over the world, there's a microscopic war being waged every single day. It's a totally invisible battle, but the stakes, they couldn't be higher. We're talking about the bread on our tables and the safety of our entire global food supply. Okay, let's get into this story of a really nasty fungal foe and the tiny allies we just might be able to use to fight it.
So, we've all heard of probiotics for our own health, right? You know, the good bacteria that help our bodies function. But what if we could take that exact same idea and apply it to plants? What if we could give our crops their own little bacterial helpers to protect them from disease? Well, that is precisely the question a group of scientists decided to put to the test.
First up, let's meet the villain of our story. We're talking about a fungus, and it poses a massive, massive threat to one of the world's most critical crops, wheat. The disease is called Fusarium head blight, or FHB for short. And listen, this isn't just some small, localized problem. This is a truly devastating blight that hits cereal crops all across the globe. It attacks the heads of the wheat plant, right where those precious grains are supposed to form.
And the damage it causes is, well, it's just staggering. In Europe alone, Fusarium head blight is responsible for wiping out an estimated 10 to 30% of the entire wheat harvest. That's a huge loss of food, and it's a massive economic hit for farmers.
But it gets worse. The fungus doesn't just destroy the crop. What it leaves behind can be just as dangerous. See, this Fusarium fungus produces something called mycotoxins. These are basically nasty little poisons that contaminate any grain that survives, making it toxic and totally unsafe for us or for animals to eat. So you can see this is both a food security problem and a public health crisis. So, how do we fight back against this thing? Well, for years, the main line of defense has been chemical, but there's a big push to find a better and, frankly, a greener way to do it. Right now, farmers rely mostly on chemical fungicides, and sure, they can work, but people are getting more and more concerned about their impact on the environment. That sent scientists on a hunt for biological alternatives, a way to partner with nature instead of fighting against it.
And that brings us to the heroes of this explainer. Instead of chemicals, researchers turned to two very special bacteria to see if they could act as bodyguards for the wheat.
Let's meet our contenders. On one side, we have Lactobacillus plantarum. Now, if that name sounds a little familiar, it should. This guy is a superstar in the world of probiotics and fermented foods. Think sauerkraut, think sourdough. On the other side, we have Bacillus amyloliquefaciens. This is a natural resident of healthy soil, and it's known to be a straight-up powerhouse at producing compounds that stop fungi right in their tracks.
Okay, so with their microbial champions chosen, the scientists set up the ultimate test. They had to see if these tiny bodyguards could actually perform, not just in a tidy little petri dish, but out in the real world, in a messy, unpredictable wheat field.
The first round of this fight took place in the lab. The researchers basically put the bacteria and the Fusarium fungus in a ring together to see what would happen. And the results? Well, they were pretty darn dramatic. And wow, take a look at this. We're seeing the battle up close thanks to a scanning electron microscope. Those long, stringy things you see, that's the fungus. And all those little rod-shaped guys swarming all over them, that's our soil powerhouse, Bacillus. They are physically attacking the fungus, causing its threads to literally shrink and lose their structure. This isn't just blocking its growth, this is a full-on microbial assault. So after seeing that success, it was time for the main event, the field trial. The researchers set up 4 different plots of durum wheat. One was left totally untreated, that's our control. Another got the standard chemical fungicide. And then there were 2 biological treatments, using a mix of both of our bacterial heroes. The first one, called Bio-1, got a weekly spray. The second, Bio-2, got just a single spray right when the plant was most vulnerable.
So after the harvest, the team gathered all the data. And the results didn't just show that their microbial bodyguards had a real impact. They also revealed this fascinating secret about how they were working.
Let's look at the actual numbers here. This table shows the FHB index, which is basically a score of how badly the wheat was hit by the disease. Higher is worse. The untreated control plot scored a 9.1. The chemical fungicide, no surprise, was super effective, with a score of just 1.6. The single bacterial spray, Bio-2, well, it didn't do much better than the control. But then look at Bio-1, the weekly spray. It scored a 4.6. And this chart just makes the difference so clear. So here's the key takeaway. While the chemical treatment was still the most powerful, that weekly biological treatment, the Bio-1 group, slashed the disease score by nearly 50% compared to doing nothing. That is a really significant reduction. For a farmer, cutting the disease in half could easily be the difference between a profitable year and a total loss. Now, that alone would be a fantastic result, but when the scientists analyzed the DNA from inside the wheat seeds themselves, they discovered something they were not expecting at all, a twist that totally changes how we think about this kind of protection.
So to understand this twist, we need a new term, endophyte. It sounds a little technical, but the idea is simple. An endophyte is just any microbe that lives inside a plant's tissues without hurting it. You can think of it like the good bacteria in our own gut, our microbiome. Well, it turns out plants have an internal microbiome too.
And here's the big surprise. The DNA analysis proved that the Lactobacillus, our little probiotic bacterium, was now present inside the seeds from the treated plants. It wasn't just sitting on the surface acting like a shield. It had actually moved into the plant tissue itself, becoming a living, internal part of the plant's defense system.
So what does all this mean? Well, this discovery really opens up a whole new frontier for how we protect our crops and how we can create a much more sustainable way to farm. All right, so what are the big takeaways? First, we have clear proof that these biological bodyguards can make a real dent in a serious crop disease. Second, we learned that consistency is key, that weekly application made all the difference. And, maybe the most exciting part, we now know that some of these bodyguards don't just stand watch on the outside, they can become internal allies, protecting the plant from within. This is a huge, promising step forward for the future of sustainable farming.
This research just makes you wonder, doesn't it? If a probiotic bacterium from silage and a common soil microbe can team up to protect our wheat, what other powerful alliances are just waiting out there to be discovered? The microbial world is absolutely full of potential solutions, hiding in plain sight, ready to help us grow the food of the future.